I always believed my marriage to Sophie was built on love, trust, and laughter. She had this infectious energy, an effortless charm that made her the center of any room. When we first met, I was captivated by her confidence, her playful nature. She could turn the dullest moment into something exciting, always pulling me into her whirlwind of spontaneity. Our relationship thrived on adventure. Road trips, late-night dances in the living room, unexpected weekend getaways. She kept life unpredictable. But unpredictability wasn't always a good thing. Some surprises weren't charming. Some revealed truths I never wanted to face. That evening, I returned home from work, exhausted. My company had been pushing for a major merger, and the stress gnawed at me. I loosened my tie as I stepped through the front door, inhaling the scent of vanilla candles mixed with something floral, Sophie's perfume. Finally! Her voice rang through the house, light and teasing. She appeared from the kitchen, holding a wine glass, her fitted black dress hugging her figure. "I thought you'd never get home." Before I could respond, laughter erupted from the living room. My stomach tensed. Sophie's friends, Lisa, Paige, and Nicole, sat on the couch, their eyes glinting with amusement. "Hey, ladies," I greeted, forcing a polite smile. Lisa, the tall brunette with piercing blue eyes, smirked. "We were just talking about you." I raised an eyebrow. "Should I be worried?" Nicole, blonde and petite, chuckled. "Oh, definitely." Sophie wrapped her arms around my neck, pressing a soft kiss to my cheek. "Relax, baby. We're just having fun." Something felt off. Their amusement had a sharpness to it, an inside joke I wasn't in on. I let Sophie pull me onto the couch, her fingers lazily tracing circles on my arm. Paige, the quietest of the three, leaned forward, her lips curling at the corners. "So, Carter, do you scare easily?" I frowned. "Not really." "Why?" Nicole snickered. "You'll see." I glanced at Sophie, but she only grinned, eyes twinkling with mischief. The night carried on with drinks and conversation, though I couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing beneath the surface. The way they exchanged glances, the suppressed giggles, it was all too deliberate. Then, the doorbell rang. Paige nearly choked on her wine, and Lisa clapped a hand over her mouth, her shoulders shaking with laughter. Sophie shot up from her seat, her excitement barely contained. "I got it!" she announced, practically skipping toward the door. The moment she opened it, 2 uniformed police officers stepped inside. My stomach dropped. One officer, a tall man with a no-nonsense expression, locked eyes with me. "Carter Reynolds?" I stood, my pulse hammering. "Yes. You're under arrest for fraud and embezzlement." Everything slowed. The words barely registered before the second officer grabbed my wrist, snapping handcuffs around them. Sophie and her friends exploded into laughter. The officers smirked. "Just a prank," the taller one said, stepping back. "Your wife thought it'd be funny." The humiliation hit me like a freight train. My own wife had orchestrated this? I turned to Sophie, searching for some sign of regret, but she was doubled over, clutching her stomach, tears of laughter in her eyes. Lisa wiped her own eyes, struggling to breathe. "Oh my God, Carter, your face, priceless." Nicole leaned against the couch, still giggling. "I thought you were about to pass out." I forced a smile, though my insides burned. "Good one," I muttered, shaking my head as the officers removed the cuffs. Sophie kissed my cheek, still grinning. "Lighten up, baby. It's just a joke." But as they all continued laughing, something inside me shifted. This wasn't love. This was something else entirely. And for the first time in our marriage, I saw Sophie for who she truly was. The laughter echoed long after the so-called prank ended. I sat there, gripping my drink, pretending to smile while Sophie and her friends relived my humiliation, recounting every detail like it was the highlight of their week. "I swear," Lisa gasped between giggles, "for a second, I thought Carter was going to faint." Nicole snorted. "Right? The way his face drained of color? Priceless." Sophie, lounging beside me, wiped tears from her eyes. "Oh, baby, you should have seen yourself. You looked so guilty. She kissed my cheek, still grinning. But you took it well. I didn't respond. Inside, something twisted. I had always known Sophie had a playful side. She thrived on mischief, on pushing limits. But this? This wasn't just a joke. This was public humiliation disguised as fun. I finished my drink in one gulp, the burn doing nothing to dissolve the anger pooling in my stomach. The night stretched on, their laughter ringing in my ears, but I remained silent, nodding when necessary, pretending everything was fine. By the time Sophie's friends left, I was on edge. She wrapped her arms around my waist, pressing against me. Still mad. I exhaled slowly. I don't know what you expected, Sophie. She pouted. Oh, come on, Carter. You know I love messing with you. There's a difference between teasing and this. She rolled her eyes. You're acting like I actually had you arrested. I pulled away. That's not the point. She sighed, rubbing her temples. You're overreacting. I let out a dry chuckle. Right. Of course I am. She huffed. It's not that serious. I didn't argue. There was no point. Instead, I went to bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling something inside me shift. Suspicion grows. Over the next week, things changed. Maybe I was looking too hard, but suddenly, Sophie's behavior seemed off. She spent more time glued to her phone, her fingers flying across the screen, a small smirk tugging at her lips. Late-night giggles, whispered conversations. When I'd walk into the room, she'd quickly lock her screen or flip her phone over. I noticed the change in her schedule, too. I'm going out with the girls, she'd announce, slipping on her heels, brushing past me without a second glance. Or, Lisa and I are getting drinks. Or, Paige had a rough day, girls' night. Her excuses blurred together. Normally, I wouldn't question it. But after the prank, after the way she so easily dismissed my feelings, something inside me told me to pay attention. One evening, after another so-called girls' night, Sophie came home late. I watched as she slipped off her heels, her movements slow, almost lazy. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She didn't even glance at it. Curious, I waited until she went to the bathroom before reaching for it. The screen lit up with a message from an unknown number. Tonight was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you. My breath caught. The bathroom door creaked. Quickly, I placed the phone back where it was, schooling my expression as Sophie walked out in her silk robe. She stretched, yawning. Long night. I forced a nod. Yeah. She smiled. Yeah. Lisa was a mess. We had to practically carry her out of the bar. She lied effortlessly. I watched her climb into bed, rolling onto her side as if nothing was wrong. That night, I barely slept. The first clue. The next morning, I decided to dig deeper. When Sophie stepped into the shower, I reached for her phone again. This time, I unlocked it. The messages confirmed my worst fears. Lisa, he totally bought it? Sophie, hook, line, and sinker. Paige, does he suspect anything about you and... The last message cut off. My stomach clenched. You and who? Before I could read more, I heard the water shut off. I locked the phone and placed it back exactly as it was, returning to the kitchen like nothing happened. Sophie walked in minutes later, her damp hair clinging to her skin. She kissed my cheek. Morning, baby. I turned to her, studying her carefully. Was she even the woman I married? She grabbed her coffee, completely unaware of what I now knew. Following the trail. I needed more than just messages. I needed proof. That evening, I left work early. Sophie had told me she was meeting Lisa for dinner. Instead of going home, I followed her. I kept a safe distance, watching as she parked in front of an upscale hotel. My pulse pounded. I gripped the steering wheel, barely breathing as she stepped out, her dress clinging to her body, her hair curled to perfection. She wasn't meeting Lisa. Then, the final blow. A man exited the hotel. Tall. Dark hair. Confident smirk. Sophie walked straight into his arms. He kissed her neck. My wife, melted into him, her hands sliding over his chest, whispering something that made him chuckle. Everything inside me shattered. I snapped photos. Evidence. Proof. I should have confronted her then and there, should have stormed over and exposed her for the liar she was. But I didn't. Instead, I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Because I had something else in mind. She thought she could humiliate me? She thought she could laugh at my expense? She had no idea what was coming. I sat in my car for what felt like an eternity, watching my wife wrap herself around another man, her hands tracing his jawline the way she once did mine. I should have felt pain, maybe even heartbreak, but all I felt was something darker. Something colder. Betrayal is a funny thing. It doesn't just break you, it changes you. I wasn't going to cry over Sophie. I wasn't going to beg, scream, or confront her in some dramatic scene. No, she wanted to play games? Then I'd give her one she'd never forget. Gathering the pieces. The next morning, I acted like nothing had changed. Sophie hummed while making coffee, her robe hanging off her shoulders, exposing skin that another man had touched just hours ago. I forced a smile. How was dinner with Lisa? She didn't even flinch. It was nice. We ordered too much food, though. I nodded, pretending to believe her. She had no idea I had pictures, no idea I had stood outside that hotel, watching her deception unfold. Maybe next time I'll tag along, I suggested, gauging her reaction. Her smile didn't falter, but her fingers gripped her coffee mug a little tighter. Girls' nights are kind of sacred, babe. Of course. She thought she was so clever. By the time she left for work, I had a plan. Step 1, the decoy. That afternoon, I met with Lisa. She had no idea I knew the full extent of her involvement, so I played dumb. Lisa, I need your help. She sipped her iced coffee, tilting her head. With what? I leaned forward, lowering my voice. I think Sophie's been acting weird. She blinked, feigning innocence. Weird how? She's always on her phone, always out with you guys. I don't know, Lisa. I feel like she's hiding something. She hesitated. Carter, you're overthinking. I shook my head. I don't think I am. I need proof. She smirked, probably enjoying the fact that I was still clueless, at least in her mind. And what do you want me to do? I want you to tell me where she's really going. Lisa hesitated for a moment, then sighed. Look, if I tell you, you can't let her know it came from me. I nodded, pretending to be desperate. She leaned in. She's been seeing someone. I clenched my jaw, pretending to process this information. Who? Lisa hesitated before whispering, Ryan Keller. I knew that name. A wealthy businessman in our social circles. Married. Connected. So that was the man she was risking everything for? Thank you, Lisa, I said, feigning devastation. She placed a hand on mine. I'm so sorry, Carter. She wasn't. She was enjoying this. Step 2, the bait. Now that I had a name, I needed to strike. That night, I sent Sophie a text. Hey, I've been thinking. Let's have a date night. Just us. It took her a moment to respond. Sophie, babe. That's sweet. But I have plans with the girls. Of course she did. Alright, another time then. She didn't suspect a thing. Now, it was time to make my move. Step 3, the trap. The following evening, while Sophie thought I was working late, I followed her again. She arrived at the same hotel, her steps confident, her dress tighter than usual. She had no guilt, no hesitation. But this time, I wasn't just watching. This time, I had company. 30 minutes later, I walked into the hotel lobby with Ryan Keller's wife, Victoria. She had taken some convincing, but once I showed her the photos, she had been more than eager to confront her cheating husband. We rode the elevator in silence, my pulse steady. The rage I once felt had transformed into something sharper, focus. We reached the suite number Victoria had confirmed belonged to Ryan. She knocked. Seconds later, the door opened, revealing Sophie, her lipstick smudged, her dress barely covering her thighs. Her smile disappeared the second she saw me. Carter. She didn't get the chance to explain. Victoria pushed past her, storming into the room where Ryan was sitting on the bed, buttoning his shirt. His face paled at the sight of his wife. Victoria, he stammered. She threw the photos at him. You disgust me. Sophie turned back to me, her face twisted in panic. Baby, I can explain. I chuckled. Oh, I bet you can. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Don't. Her eyes filled with tears. Carter, please. No, my voice was cold, final. You don't get to cry. You don't get to play the victim. Not after what you've done. Ryan and Victoria were still arguing behind us, but I barely heard them. I stared at Sophie, the woman I once adored, and felt nothing. She had humiliated me. She had laughed at my expense. She had thrown away our marriage for lust, for secrecy. And now it was her turn to suffer. I turned, walking away without another word. Because this was only the beginning. Sophie didn't come home that night. I wasn't surprised. After all, where could she go? Ryan's wife, Victoria, had made it clear that she was filing for divorce. The scandal would tear through their social circles like wildfire. I knew Sophie. She hated being the center of drama, especially when she wasn't the one controlling it. For the first time in years, I slept soundly. No tossing, no turning, just peaceful, undisturbed rest. By morning, my phone buzzed. Sophie, please, just talk to me. I ignored it. Then another. Sophie, I know I messed up. I need to explain. She didn't need to explain. I already knew everything. I went about my morning routine as if nothing had changed. Had breakfast. Read the news. Enjoyed my coffee. By the time I left for work, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. A taste of her own medicine. I didn't reply to Sophie's messages. Instead, I went straight to my lawyer's office. File the papers, I told him. He nodded. Are you going for a clean break or something more strategic? I smirked. I want her to regret every choice she made. We had a prenup. A good one. When we got married, I had been the one with the money. Sophie had insisted she didn't care about wealth. I love you for you, not your bank account, she had said. But over time, she had grown accustomed to the lifestyle. Expensive vacations, designer clothes, a house in an upscale neighborhood. She loved the privileges of being my wife. And now? She was about to lose everything. When desperation kicks in. By noon, Sophie showed up at my office. She barged past my assistant, her eyes red, her hair a mess. Carter, please, she gasped. Talk to me. I leaned back in my chair, calmly sipping my coffee. I have nothing to say to you. She dropped into the chair across from me, clutching her hands together. It was a mistake. I raised a brow. A mistake? You don't accidentally cheat, Sophie. You don't accidentally sneak into a hotel room with another man. She bit her lip, desperation flashing in her eyes. I wasn't thinking. I chuckled. Oh, you were thinking. Just not about me. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Her bottom lip trembled. I love you. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. You don't love me. You love what I provided for you. She flinched, her tears spilling over. I don't want to lose you. I tilted my head. You didn't care when you were wrapped around Ryan. She sobbed, shoulders shaking. It meant nothing. It was just excitement. Something different. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face blank. She continued, voice pleading. You have to believe me, Carter. I was stupid, but I don't want to throw away everything we have. We can fix this. I stood, adjusting my tie. No, Sophie. You threw everything away. She stared up at me, panic setting in. We can go to therapy. We can start over. I'll do anything, Carter. I exhaled, looking at the woman I had once loved. The woman who had laughed at my humiliation, who had lied to my face for months. And now? She was at my mercy. I leaned down, lowering my voice to a whisper. You should have thought about that before you made a fool of me. Then I walked out. The final blow. The divorce was swift and brutal. The prenup ensured she walked away with nothing but the clothes on her back. The house? Mine. The car? Mine. The bank accounts? Locked under my name. Sophie fought. She begged. She even tried turning her friends against me. But Lisa and the others? They scattered the moment they realized she had no more power, no more status. She had lost everything. A week after the papers were signed, I ran into Victoria again. She was sitting at a cafe, sipping a martini, looking more radiant than ever. I slid into the seat across from her. "How's the single life?" I asked. She smirked. "Liberating." We clinked glasses. Sophie thought she had won when she plotted that humiliating prank. She thought she could cheat and get away with it. She thought I would always be there, waiting. But now? She was nothing more than a bad memory.